The Chancellor addresses the court. Here's your look at the pure arts. This is the Court of the Dead, and this is Xiall, the Osteomancer's vision. The power behind the faction of the bone is Xiall, the Chancellor of Osteomancy, who cares little for the delicate game that death plays within the Court of the Dead. In fact, she finds much of the court a contemptible exercise in excess, but is neither ego nor arrogance that drives the cold and calculating Xiall, knows purely logic. Every move Chancellor makes is part of a deeper plan, but a deeper plan conceived by whom? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and measure off to the top of Xiall. I believe I might have even called her Zal in another review, but it's actually Xiall. We're going to go ahead and take the tape measurement right to the very top of her crest, and according to the tape measure, Xiall from the Court of the Dead stands 10.7 inches in height, and that in centimeters works out to be 27.3, almost 27.5 centimeters. Here are the other two reviews that we had a look at. The other two statues, that was Keir, and we also had a look at Gethsemane, the other two statues of the Court of the Dead. Again, a big thank you to the folks over at Pure Arts for even making these reviews possible. They were nice enough to send these my way, and a perfect time, actually, during Halloween, to be looking at the Court of the Dead. Still, I feel like my attention is focused on Gethsemane, but I gotta admit, there's some interesting aspects and rather interesting mold choices that they went with Xiall. Can't wait to get a more extensive review of her underway. The statue comes with one accessory, and that is her scepter. The scepter is comprised of two pieces, the longer stemmed handle, and then of course the top that's going to attach to place. There's a hole here, and there's a peg here, so you can kind of imagine how the two are going to come together. You don't actually have to worry about getting it around her hand first before you attach the two pieces together. You can attach them already and simply just slide them across her fingers. I'll show you guys that in a second as well. Really like the decorative details that they've added to this kind of scepter staff that she has. It's a two-eyed skull, rather jarring at first to see that. A really neat looking skull as well. It's kind of brushed with some really faint traces of this ivory kind of cream color to an otherwise gray surfaced plastic. It's a really nice decorative piece to say the least, and even like the back of it has the natural cracks. This looks like this would be the top temple section of the skull head, just a lot thinner in profile. Again, I really like this quite a bit. The rest of the plastic is just a brown plastic, and then they've just kind of edged the tips. I don't know if you can see it or not, but they've just kind of tipped the edges there in like a copper color, really just to enhance some of the sculpting that they put in place. I have to admit, though, this scepter is not the easiest thing to stay on of Xiall. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about here in a second. But overall, I mean, quite extensively long. It's even, in fact, longer than the statue itself. So let me show you the difficulty when it comes to the staff. The staff is nice and it's good and long, but the problem is it doesn't stay on Xiall's shoulders very well. You don't have to worry about assembling after the fact. You simply can put it together, and to attach it, you just put it inside the palm like that, and put it against these three fingers and resting against the thumb, which is fine and good, but there's nothing really holding the top of the staff against the shoulder collar of Xiall. I found one thing to work around that is these little bumps, these spikes that stick out. If you get them right behind this ledge, and you don't want to clip it by accident. There we go. If you put it right behind these little bumps, these ridges on the tops of her collar, it seems at times enough to kind of keep everything in place. The problem is, as soon as you start moving the statue, turning it and picking it up, then you kind of dislodge what you thought was a proper footing, and then all of a sudden the staff wants to slide off again. It's the only thing, the one nitpick that I have about this particular statue is I kind of wish again that the staff could properly stay in place. Twisting it and having almost the skull facing this way seems the most secure, stable place. Again, they could probably have put a hole there, and they could have put a peg in the actual staff so that when you pegged it down, it would guarantee that it wasn't going to be going anywhere. I think for the time being, though, it's in a fine enough state. Until, again, I pick up the statue and I want to move it, then you might have this sliding off again. Moving forward with the rest of this review, I've just decided to leave the staff off altogether. It's just a lot easier for me to be able to pick the statue up and show you guys some close-up looks at the details without having to worry that the staff is going to keep falling off the collar. So you'll see it at the end of this review. Why don't we first start by looking at the base, the display bottom for Xiall, and then we'll kind of look at the rest of the stuff that's going on with this statue. There's definitely a lot to take in, and hopefully over the course of this review, I'll be able to show you guys extensively some of the cool stuff that Pure Arts was able to incorporate into this statue piece. But I guess it all starts with the base, and why not that be the first place that we look at? The base itself has, again, its own marker point on the front. You'll see that with the other two statues that we had a look at, each of the markers, the crests on the front, vary from one to the other. As we flip the statue up very carefully, you can see the Court of the Dead familiar font that's been etched on the underside of the display base. Also a collaboration between Sideshow Collectibles and Pure Arts. Those were also raised as well. This one doesn't have felt feet. A point that I also didn't mention with the other two statues that we had a look at either. None of them have felt feet. I don't really know if I would necessarily worry about scratching and moving these across surfaces, because a lot of times you're probably going to, at least for myself, I'm usually going to be picking these up and moving them to somewhere else on the surface or wherever I display these. But I do want to mention the fact that they don't have felt feet. Something that you normally expect to see with a lot of the statue releases is not actually here on Xiall or any of the other members of the Court of the Dead. This is a really neat looking display stand though. I like how this is all done in painted gold, and then trickled over the edge of it you've got this darker brown color. It kind of actually looks like it's melted wax. I'm sure that's not necessarily the reasoning behind it, and maybe it's probably something else, maybe it's blood for all we know, but it kind of does look like a little bit like it's melted candle wax that's trickled off the edges. At least that's the story that I'm attaching with it. Sprinkled with that, you've got some little skulls that have made their appearances, and a few skulls also up the side here there of the pillar that makes up the back railing section. This, I guess, is the podium in which members of the Court of the Dead would take their stand and plead their case. And over the years, it looks like the posts of the back railing have broken, given way. Really nice looking, exquisite details. Especially like the skulls. The skulls is one of my favorite aspects of this statue. I also like the fact that they're not all facing the same way. They are changing in their direction. Some of them looking at you, some of them looking away. I find myself very intrigued by Xiall's head sculpt. It doesn't fully feel like a skeleton that I'm looking at. Possibly the giveaway of that is the fact that the nose and the lips are still fully intact. Normally when you would see a skeleton, you would almost expect that the nose be completely gone as well as the lips. So it kind of feels like it's a creature that dwells in between the world of the living and the dead. More leaning towards dead, I'm sure, than anything else. It's a really interesting head portrait as well, also from the side. Because like right here is where you would expect a skull to stop. But here it's been elongated and stretched out, almost like I'm seeing something from the world of H.R. Giger. It's got some interesting shading. Most of the color is actually kept to a very bone white or cream color, but I love this additional kind of recessed sections of brown just to highlight the fact that she's got the heightened, higher cheekbones. And I really like the fact that the eyes, there's nothing to the eyes other than dark recessed sockets. And then you've got these white orbs of light staring right at you. Really clever the way that they've done that. I've been trying to figure out what this material is in her collar. I know most people would just simply say it's plastic talking about the statue, but I gotta wonder what this would have been made of if you saw, God help you if you did, Xiall in person. At first glance, it kind of looks like it should be bone, but then I'm looking at it and I'm seeing protrusions of claws and teeth sticking out of it. So I gotta wonder if this is maybe made of flesh, like a flesh collar, for example. It's really done nicely, though, that they've added a darker brown, kind of getting closer and closer to the head. So the head, as a result of it, stands out, instead of this all being this color here. Then you've got the additional kind of gold yellow, and then you've got the tips, the edges of the collar, done in a white. I also like this, that they've added the teeth, and they've painted the teeth in white, so those also stand out as well. Spin the collar around. This is one thing I quite like is also as well, is these little scrolls. The scrolls are attached, pierced into the edge of the collar with these these little kind of copper wires. The only unfortunate end of it, though, is unless you want to go in and manipulate the wires yourself, I'm fearful that I'm going to break the hole that's holding them. These do sit a little too rigid. They don't feel like they have a natural drape to them. And that's one of the results of using wire than if they had used string. But the scrolls are done very nicely, though. You can even see there's like cracks, varying degrees of darker coloring into the cream color. And then you've got like the sections on the end, the sections you would open up to pull out the scroll, is done in a kind of a very dark copper color. The majority of the statue is quite slender in design because, of course, she's comprised of bones. She's just a bone creature. But then she's got some really interesting aspects to her. It's really the paint. I gotta say the paint is what drives this statue home. If this was done simply just in a one singular color, so much of this detail would be lost. But even like the shoulder sections, I didn't even realize, for example, there's a skull on the shoulder. If that had not been painted properly, I'm sure most people wouldn't even have spotted it either. It's got some cool skulls running down the center section of her bodice. And I even like that it kind of has a Victorian look, the way that the collar is, and it kind of leads its way into this slender kind of bodiced body. I really think that's neat. Xiall is the Chancellor for the Court of the Dead, so she's got her scrolls located on the side. The scrolls are so good, in fact, that I actually feel like I could pull one out and unravel it to read the scripture inside. The sculpting is that good. Overall, I'm really impressed with how the sculpt is on this particular piece. It doesn't have the pops of color that perhaps the other two possessed, but really kept to what colors they used for it. It definitely has a lot going for it, especially when you look at things like the legs. It's got the natural cracks you would expect to find on real bone. Really, again, like all of this stuff comes together extremely well on this particular piece. I suppose there is one bit of pop of color, and that is this orb, this skeleton ball that she's summoning in her one hand. It's not removable, and it definitely does look very, very cool. I like the way that it spirals off the way that it does. It's not done, surprisingly, in translucent plastic. I mean, we've seen translucent plastic being used with the other two members of the Court of the Dead, that I would have almost expected this one to have some translucency as well, but this one doesn't actually have it. You know, 2 reviews in, I was willing to hand in my vote that Gethsemane was going to be my favorite of the 3 Court of the Dead statues. Sure enough, as we wrapped up the review here on Xiall and ready to close up shop and turn off lights for the night, I feel myself changing my mind completely. Yes, Xiall doesn't have the colors, the pops of colors that the other 2 statues had. Yes, I would say perhaps she's not the prettiest of the 3 statues, but one thing that she does possess, and I think one of the crucial things for her to be a member of the Court of the Dead, is theatricality. She is putting on a performance. I mean, literally, you're looking at the statue and you feel like she's putting on a performance to the audience in front of her, and I think that brings her up a whole lot more to making me like this one as much as I do. She just feels like she's got a more Victorian style to her, the frilled collar and the very narrow bodiced body, coupled for the fact as well that she's got the skeleton cat. I mean, she's got a skeleton cat. What more is there to like? I really like this one quite a bit. As I said, it doesn't have as much the color or the prettiness and the beauty that the other 2 possessed, but what she does have is the wow factor. And if I had the choice to get the 3, of the 3, if I had to get the choice to get one, I would probably get this one before I got the other 2. Don't get me wrong, the other 2 are great looking statues, especially Gethsemane, but I really do like this one quite a bit. Which one do you guys like of the 3 statues that we've had a look at the Court of the Dead? Always like reading your comments down below. If you guys, by the way, are interested in picking these ones up for yourself, for the longest time, I really want to add these ones to my collection. You can head on over to www.purearts.com right now and enter in the coupon code at COTD-RS10. So when you're going to checkout, put in the coupon code COTD-RS10 and you'll save yourself 10% off your total. Can't beat that. Pure Arts also have been producing a whole bunch of cool other statues for Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs, Terminator, Ghost Recon, and even the Dark Souls. So there's a lot to get a gander at if you head on over to www.purearts.com. Check them out today. Today we were having a look at the final statue for this 3-statue release. This was the Court of the Dead, Xiall. Really, really cool looking statue. Kind of feel bad that I dismissed her so quickly after the second review. Make sure as well, guys, you hit that subscribe button down below, swing next door and turn on that bell notification, and stay tuned because there's going to be a whole lot of videos still coming your way during this month. So keep your peepers peeled. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.